So a lot of people send me their tracks and they ask me for advice. And today I thought maybe let's look at one of these questions together and then see what kind of advice we can come up with. So for example, here's Lee. Hi Oscar. Hi Lee. Love the channel. It's been a great resource for me in completing my first ever track. The infinite delay lessons was tops. Anyway, it took me 20 years to finally release a track I'm pretty proud of, and I submitted it to Anjuna Beats and it got rejected. I'm not sure why, no reasons given. I'm unsure what direction to take now as a producer. I don't know if it was the production quality or the actual song that they didn't dig. And being a guru, I doubt that, but I don't suppose you could critique or even talk about this in a video. What do you do after making a track and what are the options? The release is a techno trance track. I know you're a busy man, but any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Keep up the good work. And then a link to a YouTube video. Regards, Lee. Thanks for sending this in, Lee. Now there's a lot of info already presented to us. First of all, 20 years to make a track that you're proud of. I find that quite relatable. I still feel like there's a lot of stuff that I'm making that I'm not proud of. So yeah, beginner producers, be warned, that's actually more common than you might think. Then finishes one track, submits it to Anjuna Beats, which I don't actually know much about Anjuna Beats, except that I know the name of Anjuna Beats, so that means they must be pretty darn big. Got rejected, no reasons given. Okay, let's unpack that later. And after a rejection like that, where should you go as a producer? What should you do with yourself? Okay, there's some assumptions just from the email that we could already start giving feedback on, but let's actually have a look at the song together, give some feedback on the song, and then go into like the music business advice part. So what are we noticing? First, let's not even talk about the music. Let's talk about how it's presented. If I'm trying to put myself in the role of like a label A&R, like someone who chooses the music that comes onto a label, being sent a YouTube link is very unusual. A YouTube link that is public, that has over 100 views, and that has a visualizer on it, which already you could debate about the tastefulness of the visualizer when it's not really the point. And it's a free one, so it has a big old watermark slapped onto it, further devaluing the perceived value of the artwork. So as a label guy, I'm thinking, okay, how can I uplift the perceived value of everything that I do with regards to the label? And then this already from the gate is devaluing itself quite strongly. There are a lot of people involved in labels who are, when they see something being shared publicly and they see that they're not the only ones who have listened to it, they're already going to be like, nope, I wanted something exclusive. I'm going to just pass on this. No, thanks. And they're not going to give you a justification. That's just sort of etiquette. So I would have expected a SoundCloud link that is private and that has either 0 plays on it or maybe 1 or 2 because you played it yourself, but not over 10 plays on it. You want it really minimalist and maybe even put the name of the label that you're pitching in there, like demo for blah, 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 blah. That way people feel like, okay, they're really giving me something thoughtful and they're treating their work as if it's valuable. And that's just the visual formal aspect. We haven't even talked about the music yet, but already there's a lot to say there in how you present yourself. And first impressions do matter. Now let's talk about the music. I would say this track is pretty well produced. It uses the sounds that are appropriate to the genre. It does a lot of things right. And so I would maybe, if I was like a DJ, I would sort of rate it a 6 out of 10 because for me, it kind of lacks maybe a bit of personality, a bit of unique sounds. And because it's the only song that I've heard of this artist, I don't really get like a sense of their personality just yet. So for me right now, that's going to sit somewhere at a 6 out of 10. Now there's an important element that is devaluing it in terms of technical stuff. And that is for me, the low end. I listened to this on my laptop and it was sort of fine. And then I listen to it now here in the studio. And the moment the sub bass comes in, my whole studio just goes constantly. And so for me, that very low end needs to, in fact, be coherent with the kick. I mean, your philosophy might differ from mine, but my philosophy is that the low end energy wants to have something to do with the pulse of the kicks. So you'd want that low end energy to kind of go whoomp, 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 whoomp. something like that. And it's very likely that this has to do with the fact that your listening environment isn't very well treated in terms of bass. So you can't even really hear what you're doing in the bass. So you're just kind of doing random stuff in the sub frequencies. And I did that like for, I would say, 18 of my 20 years of experience, or however long my experience is. It's only in the last few years since I've gotten this like soundproofing here that I can actually make educated decisions about bass, which is, man, if you're a techno producer or basically any producer really, try to get yourself into a position that you can make educated decisions about your low end already during the production phase, because otherwise you're just doing random stuff and mastering won't fix that. You can try to control the problems that you're creating in the low end, but honestly, you have to make so many decisions as a producer, and if you can't hear the outcome of your decisions, man, room treatment is just so important. And so again, if I'm a label A&R, my ear's picking up on things like this where I'm going, this is someone who hasn't managed to get themselves into that kind of a production space yet. So they still have some ways to grow before I'm going to take them seriously as an artist. And that doesn't mean that any of the other decisions that you've made are wrong. It just means that the sign of an artist of a certain maturity is that they have found access to a place where their songs can get properly mixed, or at least problems like that sub bass can be avoided. And this really goes for all genres, but especially for techno and things like that, where the sound sculpting really is part of the artist process. You can't just be like, oh, we'll fix it in the mix or whatever. No, it's part of the process. Okay, so that's the content, but let's talk about how that relates to something you said in your mail, which is, finally, I finished a track. The track got rejected, and now what do I do as a producer? And this suggests a certain lack of creative abundance that I want to address, and I want to introduce you to the popcorn kernel theory of creative development.
Kevin J. Anderson, believe it or not, was the inspiration for me making Day 9 TV. Or a lot of people, when they want to do something creative, like write a book or make a game, they'll just have the one thing that they make, and they're trying to make this one thing pop off. Kevin's a big believer in starting many projects at the same time, bouncing between them, and you're never going to be sure which one will pop off first. But again, if you have enough popcorn kernels in the pan, you don't know which one's going to pop, but eventually one will pop.
So that's Day 9, this video game streamer that I love the way he tells stories. It's just so good. And so he's talking about this thing that he got from someone called Kevin J. Anderson, which is the popcorn kernel theory. And so it relates directly to what you're doing, is you've created one popcorn kernel, and now you're staring at it and you're like, why won't it pop? Come on, pop. And you don't know when it's going to pop or if it even is going to pop. You just don't know. And so the best strategy is to create as many popcorn kernels as you can, and eventually one of them will pop. And so I would like to say that your next objective as a producer is not a particular song, it's about a methodology. Find a methodology or a workflow or a series of circumstances that you create in your life so that creativity flows through you, so that you don't get blocked with, oh no, I've created one thing, and now this thing has to be my lifeline and it has to make everything work for me. No, you want to be just a vessel for the universe to flow through you creatively, so that you're constantly being inspired by things, digesting them, and then outputting creative projects and finishing them. Importantly, something that we're all a bit guilty of probably. And so then this will create an abundance for you where you just feel the urge to be creative and are not too attached to a certain outcome or to a certain result. And the sheer volume of the work that you're going to do then makes it so much more likely that something will pop off and have the expected results in the outside world that you're looking for. And talking about expected results, I want to address the fact that you sent your demo to Anjuna Beats. I don't know anything about Anjuna Beats except that they're big enough that I know their name despite not knowing them. You know what I mean? So think of it like you've just learned basic competency in like playing basketball, and now you're applying for the NBA. You're like, wow, I mean, I know how to play basketball. Why can't I compete with the big guys? So you might need a few steps in between. And so here's an alternative strategy than just aiming for the top, bouncing off, and just giving up and saying, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. No, what you do is you go to the resident advisor page of Anjuna Deep and you look at which artists release on Anjuna Deep. You make a little list, you make a little spreadsheet or something, or a text document, or I don't care what, and you write down which artists are on there. Then you go to those artists' profiles and you look what other labels have they released on. And then you go to those labels and you look at what other artists have released on there. And you look up and you listen to those artists, and then you look at what labels they have released on. And so you start to see this ecosystem where Anjuna Deep is just the tip of the pyramid, but you start to see that there's all these like smaller labels who also have their own ambition, and they want to grow, and they want to be the one to discover new, interesting, promising artists, right? And so those are the ones that you want to knock on their door. And so what you're going to do is you're going to find, let's say, 5 of them, and you're going to really listen to their catalog, and you're going to make sure that they're kind of similar in sort of taste and style range. And you're going to listen to their catalog and imagine your next project will be as a demo for them. And so you're going to make demos and you're going to pitch them to those 5 labels, one by one, not all collectively, because your worst nightmare is that 2 of them will say yes at the same time. You don't want that. But so the idea is find a much smaller player that you have something to offer for. But when you find a record label, think of it like this. Think of it as a business partner. And so why would you work together? What have you got to offer each other? Think about that, not through the lens of your ego and the one that's seeking validation, but think of it just purely through like a game theory or market value kind of a point of view. Think like, okay, this label has its self-interested goals. You as an artist have your self-interested goals. So maybe can you work together to further both of your goals? And so what have they got to offer you? Because you could just self-release. Remember, this is a strong alternative option. And also, what do you have to offer to them? Because once you knock on their door, they're going to have a look at your artist profile and they're going to be like, has this person released anything else? Do they take themselves seriously as an artist? Are they fairly consistent? What's their track record? Before they associate themselves publicly with you, they want some kind of validation that you're not a complete liability. And can you offer that validation? Now, it's true that being super small, it's very hard to get leverage because you don't have a lot of views and don't have a lot of streams. So how do you get the first few thousand views and streams and fans and follows and all that? That's not so easy, but there are a few options available to you. And one notable is self-releasing. So your music just gets out there. It might be ignored. That's okay. Another advice that I would give is get involved in your scene and help uplift other people's projects so that you can make friends in that scene and so eventually also get eyeballs on your projects. Most of the eyeballs on my projects come through me making these tutorials and spreading music production knowledge around the community. That's where most of my views come from if you look at the bigger picture of things. So like beyond just your music, how can you add value to the ecosystem that you want to be a part of? How can you give back to create a healthier ecosystem and then therefore play a nicer role within it? And I might be a bit of an idealist about this, but my preference would be to send you out into the real world to interact with real people at real party concepts in your real neighborhood. Because just sitting in front of your screen hoping for the algorithmic numbers to go up is just the most depressing way to try to do a music career, because you don't see the excitement, you don't share the passion. It's just very, I don't know, it's very bloodless and very dead and very commoditized, where we're all just reduced to our products and our numbers. And it's just so depressing when really, like, I think that you get into music because it touches something inside you that's communal and social. So go out into the real communal and social world, enact that, and then hopefully some of that in time will splash back onto your online numbers and stuff, and then you can have that as a metric of your success or whatever. That was a lot of advice, and the last bit of advice I want to give you is don't take me too seriously when it comes to music industry advice, because I am not an insider in the music industry. I don't know what's up, and things are changing so much that even the world of labels and stuff, there's a lot of debates to be had about what their role even is when you can own all the means of production, when you can own all the publication mechanisms to self-publish through DistroKid or CD Baby or whatever the hell. You can get out there and start doing it for yourself. So be careful whose advice you really take. Be careful who the middlemen are. Think about who's getting what from the interaction and the relationships that you build in the music industry. Try to reconnect with the fun and holy aspect of music that is not purely capitalistically commoditized. Thanks again to Lee for letting me use their case as a case study to give this advice. Outside of the music industry side, I'm much more comfortable and competent at talking about music production. So go follow one of my courses on courses.underdog.brussels. Leave some comments below, either advice for me, for Lee, or just say something nice about my pink beard. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other.